On February 4th, 1947, the universe was graced with the birth of a new being. The event took place in the galaxy known as the Milky Way, in the solar system of planets which revolve around the sun on the planet called Earth. In the country named the United States of America. In the state of Indiana, nicknamed the Hoosier State. This new being of the human species would become the 44th Vice President of the government of the United States. And unto him was given the name J. Danforth Quayle. But his friends would call him Dan. And his closer friends would call him Danny. This is his story.
There's a general interest in who Dan Quayle is. I was known as the chief grave robber of my state.
One word of advice: do the job.
And I am beginning to learn the value of a script.
Our story begins in Huntington, Indiana, a small farming community of 18,000 where Jim and Corinne Quayle had chosen to live and raise a family. The choice was no doubt predicated by the fact that Eugene Pulliam Sr., Corinne's father, owned the Huntington Herald Press and had hired James to run it. This is merely conjecture. Dan would later have this to say of his childhood home. It's rural America. It's where I came from. We always refer to ourselves as real America. Rural America. Real America. Real America. Yes, you heard right.
I did, in fact, eat graham crackers, drink milk, and took naps in kindergarten. I was very partial to Superman and Dennis the Menace comic books. I admit that I once had a coonskin cap and knew all the words to the ballad of Davy Crockett. And finally, I must confess, Marilyn, that I traded Valentine cards with a beautiful second grader named Penny that lived across the street from me.
When Dan was 8, the family moved to Arizona. It is here that he learned what has become a lifelong love of the game of golf, perhaps emulating then President Dwight Eisenhower. Playing golf, he learned how to control himself and to overcome his mistakes, his mother has said. The family returned to Indiana when Dan was 16, and he began his first foray into the world of politics. He became the head of the local branch of the Teenage Republicans. It wasn't difficult to guess who Dan's favorite candidate was when you saw the license plate on his car. AUH2O, the chemical symbol for Goldwater. Barry, that is.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
I asked to speak to you because I'm mad. I've known Barry Goldwater for a long time. When I hear people say he's impulsive and such nonsense, I boil over.
Upon graduating high school, Dan shared with his friends his dream of pursuing a career in government. he entered DePaul University in the midst of the turbulent 60s. The Vietnam War permeated the entire texture of college life. Dan's peers were either on campus protesting the war, in Canada evading it, or in uniform fighting it. But Dan's response to the war was to choose, as Robert Frost said, the road less traveled. He joined the National Guard. While others burned their draft cards, Dan used fire in a more constructive fashion. He learned to weld.
Not bad. Who is this masked man?
Shortly before leaving the Guard, Dan was given a standardized test. The average score was 75. Dan scored a 56. Maybe this is why he was able to get into the Indiana University Law School under a special program for disadvantaged students.
I am not saying, nor has it been reported, I might add, that I was anything like a straight A student. Very average, proverbial C-plus student.
After graduating law school, Dan went on to work in the Indiana Attorney General's office. And in 1976, the Indiana Republican Party asked Dan to run for the House of Representatives. He responded by telling him that he'd have to ask his dad. His dad said yes. Dan served 2 terms in the House, where he ranked last among the Indiana delegation in attendance on votes and committee meetings.
How could I possibly be expected to handle school on a day like this?
And in 1980, he ran and upset incumbent Birch Bayh for the Senate seat. According to Dan, the difference between the House and Senate is simple. You can get a bunch of guys and go down to the gym and play basketball. You can't do that in the Senate. Dan's efforts in the Senate did not go unnoticed. He was nicknamed Florida's 3rd senator because of the amount of time he spent playing golf there. Meanwhile, just down Pennsylvania Avenue, George Bush was taking the first steps toward inevitably crossing paths with Dan. He'd been elected vice president on the ticket with Ronald Reagan. This would virtually assure him of being nominated as the party's standard bearer in 1988. When he was elected as the Republican nominee for president, George looked around at the extraordinary number of well-qualified Republicans who might serve with him. Men like Robert Dole, Alexander Haig, Jack Kemp, and Howard Baker. Or women such as Elizabeth Dole and Jean Kirkpatrick. But somehow, none of these respected public servants appealed to George.
We cannot gamble with inexperience in that Oval Office.
Obviously, he found someone with even more experience.
My choice for the vice presidency is Senator Dan Quayle of Indiana.
It was Dan Quayle that had caught his eye. Perhaps because he was the only blonde among the group, and George liked the way the sun shined off his hair. Who's to say?
We will work we will work hard, and believe me, we will win because America cannot afford to lose.
George Bush was off and running for the presidency, and Dan Quayle was the man he wanted to run with him.
Maybe I'm amazed at just how silly I can be. And maybe I'm amazed that George Bush picked me. Maybe I'm afraid that I can't do what they want me to do. I was never that good in school, and I can't speak a word unless it's written down for me.
Let me just tell you how thrilling it really is, and what a challenge it is, because in 1988, the question is whether we're going to go forward to tomorrow or we're going to go past to the back. And I can tell you, listen, we don't want to go back to tomorrow. We want to move forward. I believe that I've made good judgments in the past, and I think I've made good judgments in the future. And the future will be better tomorrow. Past the back, that's a Hoosierism. You got to get used to that. Those of us from the Midwest, we had good upbringing. We got a good education. Winston Churchill was not a great student. FDR failed the bar examination a number of times. Admiral Halsey, a great admiral, finished last in his class.
So what if Dan didn't know all the facts? So what if Dan didn't know what he was saying? So what if Dan didn't know what he was doing? That wasn't going to stop him.
Coach of IU basketball, Bobby Knight, told me this. He says, there is nothing that a good defense cannot beat a better offense. In other words, a good offense wins. The first would be our family. Your family. My family, which is composed of immediate family of a wife and 3 children, a larger family with grandparents, aunts and uncles. We all have our family, whichever that may be.
Even when discussing an event like the Holocaust, Dan refused to let knowledge get in his way.
It was an obscene period in our nation's history. It is something that we must study, something we must understand. We all lived in this century. I didn't live in this century, but in this century's history.
Most politicians have advisors. Dan required handlers.
You have a lot of people around you trying to tell you what to do, trying to tell you to go to your room. Matter of fact, after some of the comments I've made, I've been told that a lot of times. Did I say something wrong? But obviously, when we get off the airplane the right time, making sure that you wave with the right hand, and Marilyn's on the left side, and I don't know why that is, but... And I told Philip after being able to start the engine, no mistakes, I want my union card. But I also paid my dues. I've paid some dues over these last few weeks.
Republican vice presidential candidate Dan Quayle dismissed criticism by those who believe this year's campaign has left voters uninformed and that both campaigns are aimed at getting catchy phrases on television news. Quayle said, quote, "One-liners say a lot." And he said there are a lot of subtleties communicated with a soundbite. That's a brief TV clip uttered by a candidate. He said voters can receive a complex message from a simple one-liner, especially when body language is added in.
My first reaction was that end-dive was a 3-meter springboard event at the Olympics. End-dive. End-dive. Remember that. It's going to end-dive. End-dive. Oh, look at that. End-dive. End-dive. And the American people will judge me on what I say and what I have done in the last 12 years in the Congress of the United States. I have a very strong record on the environment in the United States Senate. When you try to develop an image, a reputation on a campaign trail, it's very difficult to establish. And I found it virtually impossible.
Do you know what your job is going to be, what your principal job is going to be?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us?
I'll be Vice President of the United States.
Shortly after the inauguration, George Bush sent Dan on a goodwill trip to the South Pacific. He sent the vice president across the international date line. He sent Dan to tomorrow. He sent his right-hand man to the next day.
I can see Air Force Two taxiing in the rain, whoa, and I can see Dan Quayle wondering why, Lord, I think Dan Quayle is a pretty silly guy.
His first stop was Hawaii, where Dan opened the eyes of the citizens of the 50th state when he said,
Well, Hawaii has always been a very pivotal role in the Pacific. It is in the Pacific. It's the part of the United States that is an island that is right here.
For those of you whose eyes may be fluttering in disbelief, let me repeat that. Hawaii has always been a very pivotal role in the Pacific. It is in the Pacific. It is a part of the United States that is an island that is right here. He was kept on the move. Dan arrived in American Samoa, the land where Margaret Mead had done her landmark anthropological study. He landed on the island of Pago Pago. Dan referred to the island as Pogo Pogo, perhaps alluding to a childhood toy of his. What was truly remarkable about the visit was that the vice president had flown halfway around the world to say the following to the Samoans. You all look like happy campers to me. Happy campers you are. Happy campers you've been. And as far as I'm concerned, happy campers you'll always be. Dan Quayle has not been afraid to speak out on the issues of our day. On our defense system, he had this to say.
Right now we have a theory of mutual assured destruction that supposedly provides for peace and stability, and it has worked. But that doesn't mean that we can't build upon the concept of a mutual assured destruction, where both sides are vulnerable to another attack. Why wouldn't an enhanced deterrence, a more stable peace, a better prospect to denying one to enter conflict in the first place, to have a reduction of offensive systems and an introduction of defensive capability? I believe that that is the route that this country will eventually go.
Incredible. One of the worst performances of my career, and they never doubted it for a second.
We're at a birthday party celebrating the rebirth of Fisk, the greatest comeback perhaps since Bill Cosby returned to weekly television.
Dan was selected to head America's mission to Mars and had this to say on why we should go there. Mars is essentially in the same orbit, somewhat the same distance from the sun, which is very important. We have seen pictures where there are canals we believe in water. If there's water, that means there's oxygen. If oxygen, that means we can breathe.
He's a very different man from the intellectual midget that has been portrayed in much of the media.
I reminded Mrs. Thatcher that there was another time when she was very low in the polls, but she bounced back. And I asked her, do you have any advice for me? Turns out she did. Now I've just got to figure out a way that I can invade the Falkland Islands.
Desert on New Year's Day. He may not be the chief, but he's a heartbeat away. He had a message more relaxing than a dose of Unisom.
This will not be another Vietnam.
Only one question came to me as I watched him come and go. He was never near Vietnam, so if this was another one, how would he know? Reassurance from a quail can sometimes fail to quell a qualm.
As I have said throughout my 2 days in the Persian Gulf, this will not be another Vietnam.
President Bush is at the Bethesda Naval Hospital this morning. He arrived there for his annual physical exam.
First I'd say a prayer for myself
for the country that I'm about to lead.
He's just a heartbeat from the presidency. He's just a heartbeat from the presidency. That's today's Dan Quayle.
You think of 19%, the president has 81%, we've got it all.
That's right. I was somewhat dismayed. In addition to being concerned for George Bush's health, his overall health, I was somewhat concerned for the condition of the nation as well. Should Dan Quayle be in charge of the forces and the well-being of the nation?
I don't think that he's as stupid as people think he is.
I really don't have much confidence in Quayle.
I think it's a frightening thing to think that Dan Quayle would be running the country.
As far as Dan Quayle, I think that he would, I myself would think that he would be better and that he would be good. He would be able to handle more responsibility at it.
I would be very nervous.
I'd be pretty scared.
Pretty scary.
It's pretty scary.
Distressing.
Frightening. Afraid.
I think he would do a satisfactory job. I mean, the guy's, what, a 4 handicapper anyways.
Throughout history, our leaders have opened our eyes and inspired us with their eloquent use of the English language. Abraham Lincoln once said, "I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended on to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts." Or, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in his draft of the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable, that all men are created equal and independent, that from that equal creation they derive rights inherent and inalienable, among which are the preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." But it took a leader like Dan Quayle to completely spin our heads around with these words of wisdom. What a waste it is to lose one's mind, or not to have a mind. How true that is.